Is on now. Just waiting for the bells. Okay. Good evening, and we may start now. 6 o'clock. Shall I actually do this first? The meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public. A recording of the public part of the meeting will be available on the council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. Would members and officers please remember to switch their microphone on when speaking and off when they have finished speaking in the council chamber, and ensure the microphone is positioned near you and speak directly into the microphone. Would attendees please switch off mobile phones or put on silent mode. If you need to take the call, please leave the room. Thank you. Okay, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, apologies from Councillors Hussain and Pedersen.
Okay, thank you. Minutes of the 17th of January 2023. Agreed? Any? Okay. Thank you. Section 106, Local Government Finance Act.
None that I'm aware of, Chair.
Disclosure of interest.
None, Chair.
Urgent business.
Again, none.
A reference from other committees.
None.
Okay. Okay. The next item is appointment of Deputy Electoral Registration Officer. Mr. Debbie is there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report is brought to members for two reasons. One is that we currently have one electoral registration officer, and that's the Chief Executive, Robin Porter. But currently there are no deputies, so if the Chief Executive wasn't able to act at the moment, we don't have a deputy in place. So this report seeks to deal with that matter. But in addition to that, at paragraph 5 of the report, you'll see that the Elections Act 2022, which has introduced the need for voter identification at polling stations, part of that process requires an in-person signature of a temporary voter authority certificate. And at the moment, that would mean that the Chief Executive would need to be signing all of those documents in the lead up to an election. And we thought it would be helpful if there were additional deputy electoral registration officers to deal with that function. So that's the main purpose of this report, and the recommendations at paragraph 2 set out the steps that we're asking the committee to agree.
Thank you, Debbie. We didn't have any in the past, deputy? Did we have?
We haven't had to date, Chair. It's good practice to have a deputy. We haven't so far, but with the new legislation, it's important that we do so.
Any members wish to ask any questions or comment? No? That's a very quick one. Agreed with the recommendations? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay. Next one is restructure of the park and countryside service.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks the approval of committee for the proposed change of the staffing structures of the Council's Parks and Countryside Services Management and Supervisory team. The proposals consulted on were to increase the arboricultural services resources within the division, to create a dedicated specialist parks maintenance team, to realign some of the specific business areas of the senior management roles within the service, and the deletion of some of the vacant games attendance posts to fund this. Employees affected by the reduction of posts will all be considered for posts within the new structure, and whilst there are proposed deletions of officers, do not anticipate any redundancies as there are sufficient posts within the new structure for all affected employees. The proposals create the following new posts: a contract support officer to administer the new arboricultural services contract that has just been tendered. A head park keeper to manage and supervise the new specialist parks maintenance team, and an arboricultural technician's post, which will increase the resources available to administer service requests related to arboricultural services. There will be an increase of 2 full-time equivalent grounds maintenance operative posts within this new structure, and a 0.1% casual games attendance post, increase as well. Formal consultation commenced on the 28th of November, and trade unions were consulted formally on the 23rd of November. As a result of feedback and comments received during the consultation, there were some revisions made to the structure, which are all identified within Appendix C of the report. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
I've just got one question. Item 15, it says reduce the capacity in 2 of the posts. What does that mean? 15.
Reducing the number. So currently there are 2 posts with the same job title. So it's just reducing that by 1, because that post will be amalgamated into the new contract support posts. So it's just a reduction in posts rather than reducing capacity. Not at all, no.
Thank you, Chair. I see on the paperwork here that the grades have gone down to from 2 FTE to 1 FTE. Does that mean a reduction in wages, or do they get the same pay from what they were?
It's not the grades that reduced, it's the full-time equivalent post. So that's just a reduction in the number of people, not the grades of any of the posts.
Okay. On paragraph 11, you talk about priority parks. What are the priority parks? Can you name them, please?
Priority parks are going to be our green flag parks and our historic parks. So green flag being, that's going to test me now, isn't it? So that's going to be Leagrave, Wardown, Stockwood, Brantwood, and Bells Close, 6 parks. And then the historic parks are the likes of Memorial Park, Manor Road, Brantwood Park, those that have got a heritage status within the town.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay. I think proposal is before you, and do you agree with this proposal? Recommendations? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Okay. Next one is Head of Communications. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So hopefully mine's quite a simple one. It's more a case of seizing an opportunity. So there's been a part-time vacancy within the service, and using this as an opportunity, for a progression opportunity for 2 junior members of staff to regrade their posts and their more strategic responsibilities, and moving them from L4 to L6. Of course, I'd need to apply for those posts. They've both been ring-fenced into it. We don't anticipate any redundancies at all. But you know, there's two local young people who are in L4 post. We've got a vacancy, and using this as an opportunity to so they can progress up into the L6 post. The advertising service is a self-funding service, so it brings in a lot more in revenue than what it does to kind of cost. So there are budgeted income targets attached to the post, but in terms of what this will additionally bring a small departmental saving on top of that. But the main purpose of this is to give opportunities to great local young people who are in my team, while being able to bank a saving. So happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Mead.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a clarification. You make reference to JDs in here. What are JDs?
Apologies. I hate people that use acronyms, and there I am using acronyms. Job descriptions. There was poor communications from the communications.
I have one question or comment probably. Is the two new posts, you said the junior will apply and hopefully they will be getting this job. Is this job going to be advertised externally?
No. Under the OCA procedure, both of those individuals have been ring-fenced to those two new jobs. So 2 jobs and 2 interviews. And like I said, there is that risk. I wouldn't be taking this risk if I didn't think both of those individuals were capable of doing the higher graded post. So I'm very confident they'll secure that post in the interviews. But no, they won't have any competition. They are ring-fenced for those posts.
Any more questions, comment? Yes, Konski.
Item 9. This proposal has been put together in order to give progressive opportunities for junior members of staff, while still being able to generate a corporate saving. That doesn't come out very well, does it? You're saying you're going to pay them less, or...?
So let me explain. So we've got a vacancy in the post. So we had a part-time alpha. So that they've left. They've secured a role elsewhere in housing in the council. So we've got a saving from that vacancy. We're not going to fill that vacancy. Instead, we're going to use some of that saving from that vacancy to fund these high-graded, the difference between the posts. But there is a there is a saving, but it's not the whole of that half-time post, because some of it will be used to fund the sort of the increase in and pay for the other 2. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You interested? No. So no, it's win-win all round. Yeah.
So savings £3,215 altogether.
Sorry, Chair?
Annual savings £3,215.
At the very least. So it's going to be more than that. So that kind of works it out at the top of the L6 grade, whereas the reality is they're both going to go in at the bottom of that grade. But as part of the new responsibilities of the L6 post, because it's an income generation, I want to see them generating more income through advertising revenue, selling space on our assets, on our roundabouts and that sort of thing. So, but the only thing we can guarantee as a minimum is that 3,000. But it will generate more in the long term, but we can only quantify that saving through the staffing post at this point in time.
Questions? No? I think you had proposals. Can you a little bit elaborate on? So delete 2 existing 0.5 L4 posts.
So let me explain here. So at the moment, we've got 2 L4 part-time advertising assistant posts. One of them is vacant at the moment. I'm proposing to delete both of those posts and create the L6 post from those 2 posts. So it's deleting 2 posts, one of which is vacant, and it's creating an L6 post with that person who's currently in the post at L4 is ring-fenced to that L6 post.
Thank you. I move the recommendations set out on paragraph 2, subsection 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Do you agree with this? Agreed. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you,
Thank
members.
you. Okay, the next item is, I think, the workforce recruitment and retention funding. Good evening. Okay.
So this report tonight we're bringing before you, and that's to advise you of the recruitment and retention funding round 1 and round 2 and the payments made to Luton Borough Council staff, and to seek retrospective approval from the committee for payments already made to staff under round 1 and approval for additional payments to be made under round 2. The committee is recommended to approve the payments to council staff in advance of a report which is due to go to executive. So just to give you a background to this, the main purpose of the Workforce Recruitment and Retention Fund round 1 and 2 was to support local authorities to address the adult social care workforce capacity in their geographical area through recruitment and retention activity during last winter. And I just wanted to bring to your attention that this was coming to the second wave of COVID, and if you will recall, it's quite difficult thinking back now just of the difficult situation we were in the health and social care system. There had been real concerns, people having gone through the first bit of COVID, that in the second wave we were going to hit a winter with very severe staffing shortages. So this fund was made available to under certain conditions for adult social care staff and only adult social care alone, and it was available to external providers who were offering care and support, but also to social care staff within the council. The main purpose of the Workforce Recruitment and Retention Fund was to support providers to maintain the provision of safe care and bolstering capacity within providers to deal with more hours of care. So we were at that stage trying to get people out of hospital in a more timely manner, and we were looking to make sure we had enough capacity in the market to keep that flow going smoothly. To support, as I've said, timely and safe discharge, support providers to prevent admission to hospital. So you can see a lot of this funding was around the whole pressures that were on hospitals, and enable timely new care provision in the community, making sure we had enough services for people to go into and be supported, either to prevent them going into hospital or to support them when they came out. And just in general support and boost the retention of staff. So if you look down in the paper, you will see through round 1 and 2 how the funding was allocated. There was a total of just over 1.5 million distributed, and the majority of that funding went to the independent sector, the market out there. As you know, we have very minimal social care provider services in-house, that we commission most of it now from the market. The market was under particular pressure, and you can see the funding there that went to individual providers, care home, some of it to the voluntary sector, some of it to carers to keep things afloat. We also offered some of the funding to our social work staff, where we continue to have significant recruitment and retention challenges, and we gave that to them in the form of paying for their registration, and for non-qualified workers we offer them a £50 sum. You'll see from the paper that for care workers, that was given, the amount was given was dependent on the number of hours they worked. So just to conclude, Mark Fowler and I presented this scenario to the trade unions on the 18th of January and explained the situation, and there were no concerns raised by them. If the proposal is not granted, we'd have to think about taking the monies back from staff, and this is a retrospective agreement. I think taking monies back at this stage would impact even more our in-house staff in terms of recruitment and retention. Well, no, I think it's just a fact. I mean, I would like to highlight that the whole scenario for health and social care staff continues to be the worst I've ever known it. And we've just gone through the worst Christmas I have seen in the 10 years I've been in post. So...
I'm talking about you blackmailing us to pass it through, you know. But there you go. Sorry, carry on.
It's not a tactic I usually use, but it is to say that's the reality of what we would be faced with.
Okay, you have a question? Yeah, okay, you can ask.
Just a quick question. Don't this recruitment that was between 21st October?
Sorry, I can't hear you very well. It's probably because I have a cold.
Okay. The quick question.
Can you speak near the microphone?
Yeah.
Near the microphone, yeah.
Is that okay now?
Yes.
Okay. The recruitment that was between 21st of October to 31st of March 2022. That was last year, wasn't it?
Last winter.
Councillor Malik, can you speak just near the microphone so everybody can clearly hear you?
That was for temporary basis.
It was a one-off payment.
Okay. So at the moment we are not doing this?
No.
No. So you want us to approve the year before the payment?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we realise now we have to have it signed off by exec.
Okay. Thank you.
One question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Which grant is this and where that comes from and how much was that grant?
It came from the Department of Health and Social Care, and the amount of money we had and we spent was 1.5 million. But as I said, the majority of the funding went to the market out there to try and keep home carers working and to try and keep staff in care homes because we were still going through that very, very challenging period.
Okay. Have you been successful?
For last winter, yes, we survived the winter. We have to think of some other tactics this winter, but we have survived the winter.
Okay.
We're still struggling big time, though, in-house with social care staff, with social workers. That continues to be a big problem. We've addressed some of that through increasing the market supplement, but it's still a big challenge for us.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other question or anything? Councillor Keynes?
Can I just this is a one-off.
It was a one-off payment from the Department of Health and Social Care. It was to do with our COVID pressures. So we got a lot of money during COVID for different things. And this was one lot of money we got to try and keep the market afloat, basically.
More.
No, but there's different funding comes through for different things all the time from the Department of Health. But no, we've not had funding. We've had funding we've been able to use in the market, but we've not had funding that we can use with our in-house social work and our in-house care staff. So this was, and that's the bit that you're needing to approve, the bit that affected our in-house staff. And that was a one-off. And no, we didn't get any more.
Councillor Khan?
I don't have a question, but rather a comment for my fellow members in here. I think we should approve this because, again, the reality, it was a harsh winter for everyone. It was a harsh winter for all workers across all sectors. So I think, to use this as a method of retention, then I think we should definitely approve this.
The only comment I've got on that is we've got to be careful that we don't do it again and we have to come back next year and do the same thing.
But
if we get the funding. There's no funding.
Now, it's just to reassure you, I think we recognise there are lessons learned from the procedural journey and learned very clearly. No money. And you would notice the risks that I mentioned. The risk is around whether any other staff would come and say they were entitled to. But I feel most people are very clear what the pressure on health and social care staff was. I don't think anybody doesn't believe that was a particular area of focus. But the risk is in front of you under legal, and you will see that there.
I think my comment was more so to approve this set of funding, but also it would just be very wrong to take the payment back from workers.
There's still some people to get paid, and we're asking that they get it because otherwise half the team have had it and half haven't.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I would be in support of this.
I propose the approval, the recommendations. Agree? Councillor Malik, agree? Yeah. Thank you. So next report is 11. Who is presenting? Anne or yourself? Okay. Yep, you may go ahead. Yeah.
So yes, I'm Cathy Williams, HR Strategy and Policy Officer, and I'm presenting the pay policy statement as a report. I'm hoping you're familiar with this report and the fact that this comes to you on an annual basis. We've updated the policy statement because it's a requirement under the Localism Act to publish it annually for the year to come, for 2023, and it has to be agreed by Council in March this year. So in this year's statement, the changes outlined in paragraph 7 of the report are what has shifted since last year, and principally those deal with the pay scales that have changed as a result of the 2022 national pay negotiations, except for Salisbury scales, which have yet to be agreed. The changes to the pay spine and the grading structure within the Council as a result of the deletion of spinal column point 1, and that was agreed by this committee at your last meeting in January, and that takes effect from the 1st of April. The uplift to the foundation living wage, again, which was reported to the last committee meeting, and again takes effect from the 1st of April. But what we need to be aware of is that the foundation living wage is £10.90 with effect from the 1st of April, but our lowest pay point, according to the scales, is £10.60 from that point, and we'll have to pay a living wage supplement until the pay settlement for 2023 is agreed. We've got adjustments to the senior job titles and grades following changes in job responsibilities. We also have referenced how tool allowances that are paid to some of our former JNC craft workers, something that we did away with many years ago, how those are uplifted in line with the National Pay Award. We also have done a recalculation of the Chief Executive's pay to that of the lowest paid employee, excluding the apprentices, and the ratio of the Chief Executive's pay to the median employee of the Council. The median employee of the Council is the one, if we ranked everybody's pay from top to bottom, the one that comes plumb in the middle at 50% mark. So we've done that, and we've also set out the recent and forthcoming legislative changes which might affect the pay policy statement in the coming year. So I'm looking, if I can, for the committee's agreement that this pay statement be recommended to full council on the 21st of March, because we have to comply with that in order to publish it, and to allow this statement to be updated and republished when the pay settlements for 2023/2024 are agreed. So happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
It's maybe an obvious question, but what is a tool allowance?
I'm sorry, my phone won't turn off.
So those members of staff who were formerly under the JNC, the Joint Negotiating Committee for Craft Workers, they're principally those in our building services, they're plumbers, electricians, bricklayers, the like, who as part of their terms and conditions were required to provide their own tools. They have to provide their own tools. Yes. So they get a monthly allowance for tools.
It's an actual tool, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we had no mechanism within the pay policy statement that said how these were to be upgraded. And whilst I think there was agreement many years ago that they would go up in line with the normal pay awards, we've now set that in motion through incorporating it in the pay policy statement.
So is this tool allowance, who agrees to the cost of it? Because you could buy some very expensive tools, couldn't you?
Well, they only get the amount that is set out in our terms and conditions. They may need some expensive tools, but they're expected to provide them. And the payments range, I think, from about £50 a month to £80 a month. So over the course of the year, they're getting maximum £1,000 to provide the tools that they need. What those tools look like, I'm not privy to, I'm afraid, because it's not within my sort of sphere of responsibility, you know. But it must work, because we don't get any sort of challenge to this. It's something that I imagine it's drills and the like. And
I know this has been going on for some years, because when my dad was in this business, he had a tool allowance, and his apprentices had a tool allowance, and I didn't know it was still going, but and that's 50 years ago.
Yeah, I think in single status, it sort of transitioned across from the craft workers agreement, because it's still a feature of craft workers terms, but we don't have anyone on craft workers terms, but we have retained the tool allowance for that group of staff.
Thank you. Anybody else? Can I propose recommendation?
Yes.
Agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. What is next? These are in Yes, item 12 is yourself?
That's me again. I'm staying put for this one and the next agenda item.
Thank you.
So this is the gender pay gap report, which those of you who've been here before will recall we have to publish our data. It's a statutory requirement to publish this by the 30th of March this year, based on the hourly rate of those employees who are in receipt of full pay working at the council on the 31st of March 2022. So we're looking back at who was here on the 31st of March 2022. And the data that we're required to report in law is in Section A of Appendix 1 on page 66. And there are a number of specific requirements we have to report. And for those of you that have read the report, you will see that the gender pay gap has further narrowed this year to the point that mean pay, that's average pay, you know, if you tot it all up and divide it by the number of females in the organisation, is actually now 0.8% greater than the mean pay for men in the organisation. You will see that's in Section C, page 69, that tells you what those rates of pay are. It's a matter of 14p an hour on average, the difference. So that is quite a shift from where we've been in the past. Last year, I think it was 1.3% in favour of men, and now it's swung towards females. And there are reasons for that, which are explained in the report, and I'll go into that. The median gender pay gap, and as you recall, that's the one that's on the 50th percentile for men and women. It's also narrowed. It hasn't swung completely towards women. It is 2.7% more to a man than to a female. So you're seeing a difference between £15.61 as the median point for females and £16.05 for men. So again, sort of marginal pennies. And in both instances, this is a narrowing of the pay gap in terms of gender from between 2 and 3%. And if you look at the first two charts on page 67, you see our progress as an authority in reducing the gender pay gap since we first were required to report in 2017. We started off, I think, at 8.3%, and we're now in favour of men, and we're now 0.8% in favour of females. Section I don't know, I haven't put the, sorry, on page 68 you can see that how we compare with other private and public sector stroke non-profit organisations, and that's, yes, that's section C at the base of page 68, and you can see our pay gap is significantly less than the private sector and the public sector and non-profit organisations. Now, this shift is in part due to the fact that we transferred out of the council's direct employment the low-paid catering staff, predominantly female, that were providing catering services within schools. Those staff transferred out on the 31st of March 2021, so it's only in 2022 that they are removed from the cohort of staff who come within the gender pay gap reporting. So it's a delayed response to that. In total, I think there was about 200 staff that had transferred out over the course of time. But that means that we've got less women in the lowest quartile of our pay. So that's one of the reasons that we're seeing that reduction. We're also required to report on the gender bonus gap. And for us, that means anything that we pay to staff in terms of monetary payments or vouchers that we paid staff for incentives or recruitment and retention purposes, including long service awards, market supplements and retention payments. We report on those annually. And so we've heard from Mort this evening about the payments that were made to our adult social care staff under the retention banner, and those were paid in March 2022. So they come into the bonus gap calculations for 2022. And so they've had an impact on the gender bonus gap calculations for the reporting period. This is because a high proportion of the recipients were female, and the payments were relatively small when you compare them to the size of market supplements. So that, to some extent, has distorted the progress that we were making in terms of bonus gaps. So for the reasons that are set out in this report in paragraphs 25 to 34, we've seen a shift in the mean and median gender bonus gap towards men rather than to women. And you'll see that on pages 67, 68 and 69 that all the detail is given there. But it's, as we've heard, it's a one-off situation. Instead of it being in favour of females, the gender bonus gap has moved towards males. It's expected in future years the gender bonus gap will revert to previous levels, provided there are no further recruitment and retentions of this nature that are made. So in terms of the gender pay gap and bonus gap, we're looking to this committee to refer the report and data for submission to full council again on the 21st of March, so that we're able to publicise our gender pay gap on the government website and on our intranet by the deadline of the 30th of March this year. So it's there's a lot of statistical information there. I hope you've had the time to absorb it. Try to summarise the key points there. But if you've got any questions, happy to go through them.
You still have chance on 21st of March. You can ask the question there, if you have. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's moving in the right direction, and it's good. Can I give you an anecdote? Absolutely nothing to do with the committee. Down at the Electrolux, on the production lines, the women pushed for equal pay for a long time, and eventually they got it. On the first day of equality, Joan says to Bill, as she's always done, "Bill, can you shift this stillage for me?" And Bill says, "You wanted equality, you got equality, you shift it."
I actually recommend the approval, and matter going back to the council on 21st of March referring this item. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next one is yours as well, isn't it?
Sorry? Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So Anne Davies is relaxing today.
So in terms of ethnicity pay gap is the next report, and using the same data and principles that we used for the gender pay gap report, I use the same data and do a little calculation along the same lines as far as I can to look at what our ethnicity pay gap report. And we're looking to see if we've got similar success in narrowing the ethnicity pay gap to comply with the Black Lives Matter motion that came to Council 2 years ago, and where we're tracking, our progress in meeting those objectives. This isn't a statutory requirement. It doesn't require the same approval process and publication, but we are making, the effort to make sure that we're tracking our ethnicity pay gap. But as previously reported, we have to have a note of caution, a footnote to this data, because we can't rely exclusively on the data that we get in any given point of time, because in terms of ethnicity, our staff are not necessarily obliged to report their ethnicity. So it's regarded as sensitive personal data, and so for a cohort of our workforce, we don't have any information on ethnicity of staff. They either put not known or that they prefer not to disclose it, and there's no requirement in law to do that. So we can't oblige them. But we're making efforts through our EDI strategy to capture as much of that data as possible. Last year, we had 21% of the workforce that we didn't have their ethnicity. At 31st of March 2022, we were down to only 0.6% of the full pay workforce that we didn't have ethnicity data for. By January this year, it's come down to 15%. So over time, we will see that profile change, but we will also have people moving in and out of the council, and it's a movable feast, and it's something that we can't rely on this data in the same way as we can for gender. So in March 2022, based on 82.7% of the workforce, this is in Appendix 1, Section A, on page 76, both the mean and the median ethnicity pay gap had narrowed compared to last year. And I've got a little note of that somewhere, how much it had narrowed, but it's just a small adjustment in relative terms. It was 6.3% the year previously in 21 for the mean, and it's gone down to 5.8%. And the median was 7.5%, and it's now 4.8%. So we have, that small narrowing of the gap in relative terms. Still not as narrow as the gender pay gap, but we haven't got the full picture, is what I've said. In terms of the gender bonus gap, for similar reasons to the issues that we previously discussed around the recruitment and retention bonus payment, then we've got a definite, change in the way the bonus gap has been affected by that payment. And provided there are no further recruitment and retention bonus payments of the nature that we saw last year, that we should expect them to revert to the previous levels in the future. So in terms of the ethnic bonus gap, it's now 7.7%, and that's the mean gap, 7.7%, in favour of employees from an ethnic minority background. And the median ethnicity background, I'm getting myself all in a pickle on this, sorry. And the median ethnicity bonus gap is 168.75% of employees from an ethnic minority background. This is the reason for this relatively high proportion of EMB employees receiving a market supplement and recruitment and retention payments. So a large number of those in receipt of the ethnicity bonus is that they are from an ethnic minority background. And we've got a high proportion of our social workers and those in the front line of care who have that background, who have an ethnic minority background. And so that's why we see this swing and change in the bonus gap. So last year it was 32% a mean bonus gap in favour of ethnic minority background colleagues, and a 29% in terms of median. So it's a shift, and I think it's a one-off. I would anticipate it being a one-off unless there are some other payments that come along the pipeline before the end of March this year. So the ethnicity pay gap report also has a line in around our managers and what the profile of our managers is at M6 and above in terms of ethnicity. This was something that was requested through this forum 2 or 3 years ago when we first did the tracking of the ethnicity pay gap and bonus gap. We've got a much smaller cohort of people, so how much we can rely on anything that emerges from this, but it does show some movements. 130 people receive the pay in line with M6 and above, and that's around £27.50, I think, an hour. And there are similar issues within that cohort too of non-reporting of ethnicity. So, but it's smaller. It's only 15.5% of our M6 and above who have not reported on ethnicity. So in that cohort, we have an ethnicity pay gap of 0.23%, which is in favour of our ethnic minority background colleagues. And that has narrowed from 6.8% of white employees. So last year, the mean was 6.8% in favour of white colleagues, and it's now 0.23% of our ethnic in favour of ethnic minority background. Sorry, it's lots of E's and B's and G's here. The median ethnicity pay gap is, though, 11% in favour of our white employees. And last year, it was level pegging between white and ethnic minority backgrounds. It was at 0%. So again, it's a shift. So it's a shift towards our white employees in terms of the median point, but in terms of the mean, it's shifted in terms of the ethnic minority background colleagues. The bonus gap is something that I don't believe we can hold much, can attribute much confidence in, because there are only 5 people in M6 and above who receive the bonus. 2 of them are white, 2 of them are ethnic minority background, and 1 is not known. So we have very little variance in the payments. They get there's a 17.6% gap, both mean and median, in favour of EMB managers. And that's because, again, we have social care staff who get the largest market supplements, because these are what people at M6 and above are receiving, market supplements that fall into this data capture. And it's the social care staff who receive the largest payments, so that's why we see a pay gap that favours EMB managers. So that's the sort of headlines on ethnicity pay gap. I hope I've made it clear. I think stumbling over my words a little, but I'm asking the committee to note the outcomes of this analysis in relation to ethnicity pay gap and bonus gaps for this year.
Any question? Yes, Councillor Mead. Is that question or?
It's an observation.
Question
Okay,
first
sorry.
and- yeah. Okay. One question. Okay.
How can we ensure that in the future that the gap, the shift goes towards equalising between, the white employees and ethnic minority employees?
I think it's what are we talking about pay or are we talking about the bonuses?
Pay and bonuses.
Yeah, okay. Well, the bonuses, as I've explained, are, paid in terms of market supplements. If you're white or you're ethnic minority background and you're in a job that gets market supplement, you're getting exactly the same amount. The types of jobs that receive those payments are different sectors of the workforce. It's this bit around job segregation. So we have the refuse drivers who have got an HGV licence. They have recently started to receive a market supplement because we were having difficulty in maintaining that part of the workforce. So they're in receipt of a bonus payment. But those are predominantly male and white, whereas the social workers in certain sectors are predominantly female and from an ethnic minority background. 36% of the workforce are in receipt, 36% of our ethnic minority background workers are in receipt of a bonus. And to a lesser extent, I'll have to find my numbers here, if you'll forgive me, while I'll have a quick look.
Chair,
Yeah.
if I could just
Yeah.
address the question and perhaps give Cathy a minute to pause for breath. There's only a certain amount we can do in terms of manufacturing, if you like, changes to pay gaps. As Cathy has explained, in terms of ethnicity, then it rather depends on who we recruit and into which roles, and which roles and their pay within the structure. However, we have a people strategy which will come to this committee in the not too distant future. I'm hoping kind of at the June committee once that date is agreed. And within that we have a number of work streams aligned to our EDI work. So in terms of this work, the fundamental thing we need to do is capture the data in the first instance. We have a lot of missing data, and that's not unusual. A lot of other local authorities have exactly the same problem. It's not something that some employees put very high store on in terms of sharing with their employer. And we need to do a little more in terms of explaining to people how important it is that they do share that data with us so that we can properly monitor it and put in place policies and procedures that support that kind of equality. So in terms of other things that we can put in place, we can monitor recruitment carefully, and there is certainly a work stream within the people strategy that will look at exactly who applies, who is shortlisted, who is interviewed, and who finally is appointed. That's quite a complex exercise and not one we do very often, but we did it 2 or 3 years ago, and we need to certainly refresh that work just to see whether we are filtering out certain parts of our community at certain parts of the recruitment process. So there are various work streams that are part of the people strategy, and we'll take some time to take this committee through that work in the not too distant future. But for the moment, the data is the data. This is what we're presenting to you, and it's a really good news story, both on the gender pay gap and the ethnicity pay gap, if you look at the progress that we're making.
And I think what's particularly pleasing is when you compare us with the public sector and other local authorities, we appear to be really ahead of the game here at Luton in terms of our percentages, and that's something I think that we should be very proud of. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Thank you.
Is still that a problem? The employee do not specify their ethnicity, or they do not specify in the monitoring forms. Is that still a problem?
It is a problem because we have those gaps. We have for some time been looking at ways where once a candidate at the recruitment point gives us that data, if they share that data with us, it automatically transfers into iTrent, which is our human resources payroll system, so that we never have to ask them again and we don't lose that data from the recruitment point into the actual workforce. So we can certainly improve matters there. That's just, digital magic, if you like. But also we've got a lot of people within the workforce who've been with us for many, many years, and we just haven't tried hard enough perhaps to ask them the question again and to record the data. And that's just an ongoing issue, really.
In terms of the forms completion?
I think I probably said we need to make sure that if people do share the data, that we make sure we don't lose it. It transfers into the right systems so that it features in Kathy's work year on year. And also to go out to our workforce as it is and encourage them to share the data with us and to trust that that it is kept confidentially and it's used for positive means for our monitoring and for this kind of work.
Councillor Keane, do you have a question or observation?
Well, it's three questions actually. What constitutes a bonus payment?
It's described by the government when they're asking us to track the bonus, anything that's given as an incentive. So an incentive to remain with the council. So it can be a recruitment or retention bonus, or a market supplement. And we also include long service awards when we're looking at bonuses. So somebody, if they're incentivised to stay with the council for 25 years to get their £200 worth of vouchers, then that classifies as one of the bonus payments. The market supplements that we pay to certain sectors of the workforce because of recruitment and retention problems, that the recipients are required to repay if they leave us within a certain length of time. Also, we interpret that as a bonus payment. The retention payments that we've heard described earlier that are a bonus for having stayed with the authority and worked through the COVID pandemic, that is also a bonus payment. So the payments can range from £120 a year, a one-off payment, as we've heard, or for somebody at the top end of the scale as a social worker in children's social care, £5,500 a year. So there's a huge range in payments, and that can affect what the average, the mean payment is in terms of a bonus.
Right, following on from that, these 5 people that have got it at the moment, is it the same 5 people each year, or can be any 5 people?
I don't look at the names. I look at, the hourly rate and the bonuses that have been paid. I could check that out if it's important, but it's likely to be in the same type of posts. They're likely to be in roles that are perhaps in social work, and M6 and above, because that's where the predominant payments are.
Let's know who they are, because you've got it down to white and ethnic minority are not known.
If I could,
Yeah.
if I can help. So we pay market supplements, and at the next committee meeting, I'll be producing the annual report on market supplements. You've had it year on year, but I tell you, all of the posts across the council that receive market supplement payments, the majority are in social care, both in children's and in adults, but we do pay market supplements now to certain driving posts, to planning posts, to some building engineering posts, wherever we've got a really persistent recruitment and retention problem, and we simply must fill those roles in order to keep services to the community continuing, then we award market supplement payments. So the 5 people that are referenced within Kathy's data will be 5 people who occupy posts that receive market supplements. I'm assuming they're not long service people. They were market supplement. They will either be people who receive market supplements, and certainly we pay some market supplement payments to social care posts at that level, their kind of service manager level, because they're extremely hard to recruit and retain into specialist social care posts. Or it may be that it just happened that somebody at M6 received a long service award that particular year on that particular date, and therefore they're included in the data. The word bonus is probably the thing that's confusing here. That's the term that the government use for all of these payments that they want to track in terms of gender pay gap, and they define bonus in a particular way. So it's a word that we're not really familiar with in local government. We don't have bonuses, we have pay, we have allowances, but the government define bonus in a particular way for gender pay gap, and they say we must include payments that are made for recruitment, retention, anything that incentivises people to stay within the workplace. So we have to include our market supplements and those long service awards that we make to people. All of that gets put into the data because that's what the government insists that all employers do. Does that help at all?
Yes and no. It's not a system that's very good, is it? Because it could be open to all sorts of interpretation and malfunctioning, I think. So that's just a comment. Yeah, okay, right.
It's the government system.
It's the what?
It's the government system. Gender pay gap is a national government initiative. So I have very little sway over that, I'm afraid.
We may all pack up. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And I ask Councillor Mead for observations.
Observations, yes. Linking this report to the previous report, in this report, 20% of those people didn't reveal their ethnicity. Going back to the gender business, in 10 years' time or plus, could you have the same problem? People are suffixing their names MX, non-binary. You know, if that sort of thing cashes on, and there seems to be a lot of confusion about gender and identity, etc., you could be in the same problem in 10 years plus time with gender pay, etc. It was just a thought.
It's a fair comment. We are in a good position at the moment in that we have all of that data complete. Who knows, as you say, what will happen in the future? But for the moment, we're able to capture that data, properly and accurately at the recruitment point. So, it's okay for the moment. But it's a fair comment. Thank you.
Just before I propose the recommendation approval, is this item not going to the full council as well?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't generally get forwarded on to full council. It was a requirement from this committee, as I understand it. in terms of the ethnicity pay gap report from 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yes, it's
it was
not
a requirement.
It's not a statutory requirement to report on ethnicity.
The previous item you are referring back to the council. Is that the statutory?
Yes, the
requirement?
gender pay gap and the pay policy are statutory items,
Okay, thank you. I propose the approval of the recommendations set out in paragraph 2. Agreed? You haven't got any choice.
Thank you.
So, the next item is regulation work program. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so you've got the programme in front of you. So at the moment we've got a number of items on the March agenda. So this is the 28th of March, but there's a couple of changes that we'd like to propose. Anne's just mentioned the New People strategy, which we want to build in a little bit more time just to reflect on the recent staff survey results that are coming in at the moment. So we're proposing to bring that to the committee on the 14th of June rather than March. We're also doing some work around the council values and behaviours. And again, we want to do some staff engagement on that. So we'd just like to twin track that with the people strategy and bring that alongside in June as well. In terms of other reports, ones that will be coming in March are the market supplements report that Anne's just mentioned, the sheltered housing management restructure, the integrated SEND services. I've just skipped over one here, the business support function from children's services, because I think that will be delayed actually. We just need to seek confirmation on that, but they've still got to go through the trade union meeting, so I suspect they won't get that done in time for the March committee. And then just skipping to the other items to be programmed, we've actually covered off the workforce retention funding today, so that can come off. And the flexible ways of working, we did say we would do a review, but that's still in progress. So we'd like to suggest actually moving that to September to allow that to complete. Do you want me to just recap on those ones then for the March? So for the March meeting, you've got the market supplements, you've got the sheltered housing management restructure, and you've got the integrated SEND services.
Does anybody wish to add anything? No. Okay, I think that's okay. It looks okay. Thank you. And if there is anything. Sorry?
That's the end of business, Chair.
Is it? I haven't ended yet. Okay, if there is nothing else, so that concludes the business of this meeting tonight. Thank you for attendance. Thank you. Thank you.